What up, YouTube? It's your favorite YouTuber, Play-Doh Bear, back at it again. This time we're going to cover a few of the PC issues that I hear a lot of PC players having with Outriders. And hopefully this also fixes a lot of stutters in your other games as well. But today we're going to primarily be focusing on Outriders, how to get the best experience out of Outriders, and just some overall, in-house fixes to get the game running a lot more smoother, whether it's in-game settings, with Windows, as well as getting rid of that fucking intro video. I'm sure you all know how to get rid of the intro video by now, but for those that don't, stay tuned, or, just follow the captions in the video down below to get to a certain section. Now, that being said, let's start off with DirectX 11 versus DirectX 12. Now, in my experience, DirectX 11 works a lot better, at least in Outriders, with graphics cards that are a little bit older or have low VRAM. So like your 1660s, for example, and graphics cards with 4 gigs of VRAM or less. Now, in my experience, with at least Outriders, DX12 runs a lot better with like a 3000 series cards, lol, if you have one, or like, a high-end 20 series cards or a high-end 10 series cards. Anything with more than like 6 gigs of VRAM seems to like DX12 a lot more. In my personal experience with my 3080, DX12 is the way to go. Provides more FPS, which is always welcomed, especially when I'm running a 144 Hz monitor, and less stuttering for me. And speaking of the stuttering part and the game not running optimally, the first thing I recommend everybody do is go to their Windows security and add a few exclusions. Now, in order to access Windows security, you have to first do one of two things. You can quickly just go to your start bar and type in Windows security, and then it'll pop up. However, for me, you can see that I don't have an option to actually get into the antivirus, right? And that's because I currently have Malwarebytes running, which prevents access to Windows Defender. So if you have any other antivirus software running, like, AVG, Malwarebytes, and whatever else came shipped with your pre-built PC, make sure you turn that off and go ahead and go back to the Windows Defender setting here. So we're going to close out of this real quick. Since I have Malwarebytes, I'm going to quit Malwarebytes real quick. Windows is going to yell at me. That's fine. We're going to go back to Windows Security. And this time, it should give me the option to access Windows Defender, which is what we want. We're going to want to go to the virus and threat protection settings right over here, and then click Manage Settings. We're going to scroll down. You can't see it because my webcam is blocking, scuffed. We're going to scroll down and go to the Exclusions tab and add or remove exclusions. Now, I've gone ahead and added a few exclusions, but the only two we're going to be adding is your Steam folder and the Madness directory. So for you, most likely your Windows Defender is going to be empty. What we're going to do is go ahead and hit Adding Exclusion, and we're going to choose the folder type. Now, this is going to be different for everybody, okay, as far as this goes right here. For you, wherever Outriders is installed, you want to go to that directory. For me, it's in my Play-Doh Blaze directory, and it's in Steam right here. So I personally just add the entire Steam directory. If you want to be more precise, you can go to Steam, Steam Apps, Common, and then just do the Outriders directory here. While we're in this directory, there's also another change we can make, but we'll get to that later. But for this purpose, I recommend just doing the entire Steam folder. So go to where Outriders is installed and just select the entire Steam folder and then hit Select Folder. Since I've already done it, I'm going to cancel out of this and we're going to go on to the next exclusion. Once you hit Select Folder, by the way, it may take like 5 or 6 seconds, but like your computer might look like it's freezing, but it's not. It's just going to take 5 to 6 seconds to apply that exclusion. And when that exclusion has been applied, you're going to see something like this. The next one we're going to do is for your Madness folder. Now, your Madness folder is where the game stores a few files. And in this case, we just want to make sure that the Windows Defender or whatever isn't continuously scanning your PC. Because before I did these two fixes, even on DX12, my game would stutter frequently. And I mean frequently. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hit Add Exclusion. We're going to choose Folder once again. However, this time, since we're going to need to get to a directory that's otherwise hidden, we're going to have to go to the URL bar right up here. Just click anywhere here, and it'll highlight like whatever folder you're currently on. That doesn't really matter. All we're going to go here is type in %, like the %, app data, and then hit % again, and then hit Enter. It's going to take you to your app data folder. However, it's taking us to the roaming folder, and that's not the folder we need to go at. We need to go to the local folder. And to get to the local folder, we're going to want to just go right up here and just click app data and then hit local and then scroll down and you're going to see Madness. Click Madness and then hit select folder. And then again, wait like that 5 to 6 seconds and it should apply and you should have something that looks like this and this. And if you have your antivirus software, go ahead and turn it back on now and do the same for your antivirus software. So add both exclusions to your current antivirus program as well. You're going to need to do it to both Windows Defender and your antivirus software. But in my experience, just doing to Windows Defender seems to be the trick. But if only doing to Windows Defender didn't work, then go ahead and do it to your antivirus software as well. Each antivirus software will be different. I'll just let you guys figure out how to add the exclusions. It's going to be the same process, but within your antivirus software. That being said, let's go ahead and move on to how to remove that intro video real quick, and also a mouse smoothing, mouse acceleration setting that you didn't know was turned down until now. Okay, if you're a keyboard and mouse user and you're wondering why the fuck my sensitivity feels off in this game, stay tuned. We're going to get to that right now. One jump cut later, let's go ahead and go to how to disable that mouse acceleration setting that is enabled default in-game at 1.0 and it doesn't let you change it to 0. I swear, it's always something with Outriders sometimes. But hey, great game overall. I still love it. But it has its quirks, all right? Like, I feel like every new game that's released just has its quirks. So in order to access that mouse smoothing setting, remember how we went to that app data folder earlier? Well, we're going to go back to that app data folder right now, but we're going to do it just by hitting your Windows key, which brings up your like start menu here, and just typing it in. So %app app data %, just like we did in that folder, and it's going to take us to that app data folder right here. We're going to do the same thing. Click app data, go to local, and then we're going to get to our Madness folder. Okay, we're going to hit saved. Then we're going to go to config, then we're going to go to Windows No Editor. All right. And in this folder, you're going to have this input directory. Right click input, go ahead and open with, and I just do Notepad. And basically it's going to be empty when you open it, but you're going to want to type this in, and this will be in the video description below. So basically copy and paste what's in the video description below, paste it in the input folder here, save it, and you're good to go. That's it. And now your mouse acceleration, mouse smoothing will be disabled. This made a whole difference for me. You may need to go back in game and adjust your in-game sensitivity now. It took me like a few hours to adjust back to it, but no longer is my vertical and my horizontal mouse movement being accelerated, because for the longest time, it felt like I was fighting against the game to properly aim. You know what I mean? Like I would aim to the right, but I would have to adjust. I would go vertical and then it would just shoot up sometimes or just not shoot up sometimes depending on the acceleration. So if you're playing Techno or any character in this game that requires aiming, so like Techno, Trickster, when you're playing Firepower Trickster, Firepower Techno, it is a godsend of a fix. Thank you, Dawson, actually, for letting me know this existed. Appreciate that. Quick shout out to Dawson. I'll put his YouTube and shit down below as well. Go check him out. Keep the boy wonder. That being said, let's go ahead and move on to another fix, which is disabling that intro bird video. Jump cut number 2. In order to go ahead and delete that intro video, or just remove it from starting up, we're going to want to go back to our Outriders directory where the game is installed. So we're going to go back to our Steam directory, our Steam apps, common, Outriders. We're going to go to the Madness folder here. Then we're going to go to Content, Movies, and it's going to be called splashscreens.umovie. And rather than deleting the file, what I like to do here, if you can see on the screen, is after umovie, just type in .old, and that changes the extension type to where the next time you now start up Outriders, that annoying fucking flying bird will no longer be present. So those are the quality of life fixes that we can do. Disable mouse smoothing and disable that intro video. That being said, let's go ahead and go back and reshift our focus to getting the most out of not having your game stutter. Now that we've already covered adding the exclusions to your Windows Defender / your antivirus, we can also do another thing, and this is only applicable if you have a G-Sync or Freesync monitor. Now, a lot of people may not know that if you have a Freesync monitor, it is G-Sync compatible. So this is if you have an NVIDIA's graphics card and a FreeSync monitor. If you have a G-Sync monitor, this feature should be enabled by default, but we can still go in and explain and optimize a bit more. Now, I have both a G-Sync and a FreeSync monitor, so I'll be able to go over what to do in both cases. Now, if you have a G-Sync monitor, it means you have a physical chip inside your monitor that communicates with your graphics card and enables a few adaptive sync settings that would otherwise not be present in a FreeSync monitor, which is G-Sync compatible. Because you have that module, you get an extra few features, but if you have a FreeSync monitor, you're really not missing out on anything. I don't use any of the other extra like adaptive sync features that is included with my G-Sync module monitor. The only reason I have a G-Sync module monitor is because I got it when G-Sync was first introduced, and there was no FreeSync option. But I think a year or two down the line, when AMD started releasing FreeSync monitors, NVIDIA went ahead and enabled FreeSync compatible monitors to be G-Sync compatible as well. So what this means is if you have a FreeSync monitor and an NVIDIA GPU, you most likely will be able to turn on G-Sync. However, it is not going to be enabled by default. It will be enabled by default if you have a G-Sync monitor with the module inside, but if you have a FreeSync monitor, it'll be enabled by default on the monitor, but not in NVIDIA control panel. So you need to have it enabled in both sections. I was helping out a few people who had FreeSync monitors, but didn't know that this option was enabled, and it is a night and day difference when you get into game. So what we're going to do is first head to the NVIDIA control panel. So you're going to right click your desktop and then hit NVIDIA control panel, or you can search NVIDIA control panel in your start search. So once your NVIDIA control panel is open, if you have the option for G-Sync, you'll see it on the left-hand side here that says set up G-Sync. We're going to go ahead and click it here. So I have two monitors, if you see here, one that says G-Sync capable and one that says G-Sync compatible. G-Sync capable means that it has that chip inside and it should be enabled by default. So if you have a G-Sync monitor, you should see this section here, and you should also have G-Sync checked up here and enabled for full screen. I recommend enabling it only for full screen, as it does have issues with windowed games, which is like borderless and windowed and borderless full screen. But if you have a game that you can't run full screen and you need to run borderless, go ahead and check this option, and then you'll have an option to apply down here, and then do that. I recommend sticking to full screen if you can, but if you need to play a game in borderless, go ahead and turn that borderless option on. It works most of the time. Sometimes it just doesn't work, and it causes more stutters than it's supposed to fix. That being said, the majority of you will probably have a FreeSync monitor, so your setting is going to look something like this. As you can tell, when I clicked over to my FreeSync compatible monitor, that is G-Sync compatible, this option popped up. Enable settings for the selected display model. This will not be checked on by default, okay? So if you have a FreeSync monitor and you have an NVIDIA's graphics card, go to your NVIDIA control panel, click Setup G-Sync, and make sure this is selected and hit Apply. I don't have it selected because this is my secondary monitor and I don't need G-Sync on my secondary monitor because I don't game on it. So I only have it enabled for my first monitor. But if this is your primary monitor, you need to make sure this setting is enabled. Otherwise, G-Sync isn't turned on and you're going to be wondering why most of your games stutter for no dang reason. Make sure you check it, hit Apply. It'll take like a few seconds. Your monitor is going to go black and then turn back on. And after that, boom, G-Sync enabled. Now, the last thing we're going to have to do after all of this is done is we're going to actually have to go into our game. So it asks me if I want to make any changes. I'm going to say no because, I already have it set up the way I want to. So the last thing that we're going to go ahead and have to do is actually open up Outriders itself and go ahead in Outriders and change some of the settings there. Well, that didn't take too long. I just didn't want to sit through the awkward silence of just, loading the game up, right? So here we are back at it again with another jump cut. Now that we're in game, we're going to adjust a few in-game settings. We're going to go to the Options tab on the bottom left and go to the Display tab up here. And the first setting we're going to mess with, it's called NVIDIA DLSS. Now, if you don't see the setting, it's because you're either in DX11 or a graphics card that does not support DLSS. If you run the game in DX12 and you have a graphics card that does support DLSS, which I believe is 20 series or higher, we can go ahead and move on. I recommend turning DLSS off unless your game's performance is under 60 FPS. If you want to learn more about what DLSS does, just go ahead and Google it. TLDR, it's AI downscaling to keep your frames up while making your game look really nice. But I recommend turning it off unless your game is running below 60 FPS. And I also recommend keeping resolution scaling at 100. Anything higher, it just taxes the GPU and it's not needed unless you really want the game to look sharp. Keeping it 100 resolution means it's aligned with your monitor's resolution as well. So I like that synergy. So we're going to leave it as is. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is why I have VSync on, but this only applies if this next section only applies if you have a G-Sync monitor or a Freesync monitor that is G-Sync compatible. Now, a lot of you out there are probably thinking, well, if you have VSync on, then you gained increased input latency. Now, that is correct. However, the fact that I also have G-Sync on means you need to have VSync on. And the fact that I have G-Sync on means that I have close to like non-noticeable input latency, okay? Unless you are like the top 1% CSGO, Valorant, or esports player, keep VSync on if you have G-Sync on. You're going to thank me. The reason we want VSync on, however, with G-Sync is with the way G-Sync works, it breaks anytime your monitor goes above your monitor's maximum refresh rate. In my case, it is 144 Hertz. In your case, that could be 165, 240, 60, just depending on what monitor you have. 70 even, or 75 even, just depends on the monitor. That being said, turning VSync on makes it so that your refresh rate or your FPS never goes above that cap. So in my case, it's 144 because anytime the refresh rate goes above your monitor's cap, G-Sync breaks. So it actually will introduce more stuttering and more screen tearing. So if you have G-Sync, make sure VSync is on in every game you play. And I can make another video going into more details about VSync and G-Sync and how to like optimize settings per game. But let's just focus on Outriders for now. And if there's any interest on that for other games, just let me know in the comments section down below. And if there's a lot of people asking for it, I'll make that video. But if not, we're just going to keep it Outriders for now because that's the main game we're concerned about. But that being said, if you are also have the option to enable FPS limit in game and you have G-Sync with VSync on, I recommend doing it. And here's why. So I have it on and I have it capped at 141. Which is 3 FPS below my monitor's refresh rate of 144. And I do this because even with VSync on, sometimes the game can actually go above 144 Hertz to like 145, ever so slightly. And even that like small like fraction will introduce like a micro stutter or stutter. So to avoid that completely, if your game has an in-game option of an FPS limiter and you're using G-Sync and VSync together, cap it to 3 below your monitor's refresh rate. So if you have 144, 141, if you have 165, 162, and so on and so forth. However, if you don't have G-Sync or a FreeSync compatible monitor with G-Sync compatible, or a FreeSync monitor that is G-Sync compatible, I would recommend leaving VSync off. You're going to be dealing with screen tearing, but also you won't be dealing with input lag. Now, if you're using a controller or you're not as sensitive to input lag, and you do not have a G-Sync monitor or a FreeSync monitor that is G-Sync compatible, go ahead and turn on VSync. The game will run really smooth at the cost of input delay. But that input delay, guys, is very noticeable if you do not have G-Sync. So I recommend my recommended settings if you do not have G-Sync enabled or a FreeSync monitor that is G-Sync compatible, leave VSync off and just deal with the screen tearing. All the other settings here are kind of like your own, like cinematics, max FPS. It can only go to 60 anyway, so anything higher is just a waste of time. I don't even know why the game has a higher setting than 60. When the cinematic FPS is capped at 60, I do window lock off. My field of view stays at 90. This is, again, user preference, brightness, user preference. Motion blur, not user preference. Turn this shit off, okay? Turn fucking motion blur off. If you have motion blur on, turn that shit off. It's gonna fucking change your goddamn life. Okay, that being said, let's go ahead and go to the display advanced section here. And surprise, surprise, I run everything at low. A quick disclaimer though, if you don't have an option to turn off anti-aliasing, that's because you have DLSS on. If you have DLSS on, anti-aliasing is enabled by default. So you're probably asking, well, Plato, you have a 3080. Why the fuck are you running this game all on low? Well, let me tell you guys. I can't tell a goddamn difference other than increased like particles, which make it so I don't see enemies as much, and the game running at a lower FPS when it's high. This is probably the first game that I would ever recommend just running everything at low. Now, texture is a bit, your own user preference. If you have the VRAM, you can turn the texture up, but honestly, even on my 3080, I really don't notice that much of a difference, so I leave it at low. And texture uses more VRAM, so if you have like a 4GB VRAM card, just leave everything at low. You're not gonna even notice a difference, guys. And I can't stress that enough. I'm usually a graphics snob, so I notice like when anti-aliasing is off. I notice those jagged lines. I notice that poor shadow quality. I notice that poor texture effects, whatever, all that stuff, right? But I can gladly say that whatever PCF is doing on the low settings of this game, they look phenomenal. Even with anti-aliasing off, I can't notice the jagged lines. It looks like there's some sort of just default anti-aliasing just already being applied, even though it's off. So yeah, keep everything at low. And that's it. If you follow this video correctly and you're at this step, go ahead and apply all the settings. Go into an expedition and just report back. Tell me how great the game feels or doesn't feel. However, to everybody that I've helped out with this before I made this video, it's a night and day difference for them. For those that are still having issues with their game not running optimally with like your 10900Ks and your 3070s and your 3080s, go ahead and give everything in the video that I mentioned a shot and let me know if it helped. Because one thing that I just dislike is gamers, buying their pre-built PCs, they have the hardware for it, and then the game literally cock blocks you with stutters and all that shit because it's unoptimized, it's a rushed release, and you have to go through all these little tiny settings to make it work optimally. Like the mouse smoothing one is insane. If you guys want to see real quick here, I think it's in controls. But do you see how mouse acceleration just has a default value of 1? You actually have to go to the config file to disable it. Like, why isn't there an option in-game to put it to 0? Who knows? But hey, report back. Appreciate all the support you guys have given me on stream. If you like the video, blah, 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 like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But honestly, just come check out my Twitch when I stream. I stream live every single day, starting around 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sundays through Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. We go a little bit earlier. That being said, peace out, bitches.